Tell us about your odyssey to get Deadly Premonition running on the Steam Deck.
I mean, the whole breakdown of that, you can go back in time. You can listen to the episode where I kind of really, really pulled it apart, the whole process that took up, I don't know, 30, 40 hours of time to get it running. I succeeded. That's the main thing. But the game itself, I was always mildly fearful after those 40 hours that I'd just say, I don't actually like it that much. So I was really happy that when I did sit down to play it, I fucking loved it. Like, Deadly Premonition was a wonderful example of a game that I thought I'd like, I hoped I would like, that I then did like, and that I liked so much I was inspired to actually finish it 100%. You know, that's rare for me these days. It's rare for me for games that last a few hours, let alone the 50 plus I put into the actual game once I'd got it installed. Like, ignoring, like I said, the huge amount of time that I wasted making it work on the Steam Deck at all. Though, I do still get at least one message on Reddit a week thanking me for my work. So I do feel like I did a service to the community. But the game itself is just really, really good because it's so assured in its own quirky, busted vision. Like, the bits that work, and the bits that don't still work for me because they don't. You know, I've heard people use phrases like beautiful, ambitious disasters sometimes to describe games like Deadly Premonition, something that may not be landing every punch, but by golly, if each isn't thrown with real purpose and whatever you want to tag on as a descriptor, this is the type of game I think I absolutely enjoy most. The eternal 6 or 7s out of 10.
You really do.
They were absolutely made for me. And outside of the writing and the characters and the setting, there's just something so ballsy, I think, in ignoring so many of the gameplay trends of the time when this game came out. You know, sometimes you play a game where development has been stretched enough that a problem has been solved by another concurrent release. But because of overlapping secret development, you just couldn't have known that. So Mario 64 releasing alongside Bubsy 3D as a classic example, because it was two teams saying, how do we make a 3D platformer? Both choosing wildly different routes, one becoming the most influential game of all time, and one becoming arguably the most reviled. You know, and it wasn't for, like, it's not their fault. It's just they picked an avenue, they couldn't shift from that, and then they watched Mario come out and they were just like, fuck's sake. But, you know, with Deadly Premonition, it watched games like Resident Evil Bloom. It came out post Resident Evil 4, but I feel deliberately chose a very different path. And it kind of looked at Resident Evil 4, traced the tendrils of its design all the way back to the earliest open worlds and horror titles of PS1, and then just started creating stepping stones at its own tangent to forge its own path. And playing Deadly Premonition, it's like you can still see the familiar in the distance, but you're just being ever forced further away from it, just doing its own thing. There's loads of the game where I cannot, in good conscience, say this was the right choice, but I also can't say this was the wrong choice, because it usually manages to pivot round to then caveat itself with like a story beat that has relied on X or Y before it, or a mechanical choice that lives or dies by some earlier thing that then colours the whole experience. It's just a game that very much has defined the phrase to live rent-free in your head for me. It's just sat in the back of my skull for ages. I've played other games that are considered better in all community or critical metrics, but just leave me a bit cold, because instead I'm thinking how the guiding hand of like a properly auteur director or risk-taking team could have better subverted expectations to make a less consistent but way more interesting title to play. I'm really glad I didn't play Deadly Premonition properly at release, because I don't think I could have engaged with it fully. I just would have seen the rough edges and written it off. But it feels poignant that I'd played the first hour or so multiple times previously, but it didn't properly click until this year, and that's what made me go all in. Like, I felt like I needed that decade or so's experience of playing other things to get that under my belt, to really see Deadly Premonition for what it was and what it is. And it all just works for me. Like, when we eventually revise our top 100 list, whenever we get to that massive undertaking, it's absolutely got a nailed on space right up there. It is my favourite game of another year for 2024 by fucking miles. Like, absolutely miles. I had a great time.